good evening and welcome to Bettakultcha Online. I hope you're all having a great evening during this lockdown. I don't know what you're all doing, probably getting drunk and watching, I don't know, Dave or something on TV, not the man, the series. Well, I haven't prepared anything for this evening. We're just going to hear from some presenters, fascinating people who are going to give their talks, and then we'll have a little chat afterwards. It's I'm just wondering how people are getting on with the lockdown, basically, because the talk was years ago that we were all going to work from home and work remotely, and nothing ever seemed to change. There was always gridlock at rush hour, and you think, well, why are all these people on the road? They're supposed to be at home. Whereas now, everyone's forced to do it. I wonder how many people are going to think, this is all right, I'm going to stay at home and continue. Or how many people just think, you know what, I can't work outside of the office. I've got to get back to the water cooler chat and the gossip. If you want to tweet us or send us a message or put a comment on YouTube, hopefully we'll pick it up, might read it out, might start a discussion, whatever, you never know. We'd like to hear your thoughts. I feel a bit like a radio chat show host now. That's anyway, let's get the show on the road. We're going to hear from three speakers this evening. So I'll introduce our first speaker, who is Elizabeth Hopkinson. So she's going to tell you a story. So please give it up for Elizabeth Hopkinson.
You ready, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Well, in these days of lockdown, everyone seems to be sharing their recipes online. So I thought I would share with you my recipe for a fairy tale. There are many variations on this timeless recipe, which dates back to the days of the oral tradition. And the hazelnuts I'm going to use give this a lovely old-fashioned flavour. Many people nowadays prefer a fairy godmother, but with social distancing, that's not really appropriate at the moment. So first of all, your ingredients: 1 apple, poisoned on one side, harmless on the other, and 1 enormous turnip, which you may need help from animals to harvest out of the ground, as it takes some pulling up. You will also need 3 bowls of porridge, preferably at different temperatures, usually 1 hot, 1 cold, and 1 in between. And then you will also need to gather up as much gingerbread as you can eat. I'll leave it up to you to decide exactly how much that is. Please take care not to get enchanted by the gingerbread. And then you'll need to get 6 golden goose eggs. Yes, just like that. And yes, please take great care when picking those out of the nest not to get stuck to the golden goose. And then moving on to the smaller ingredients, you will need one dried pea, just the one, 5 magic beans, which you may need to trade a cow to get hold of that, and then the 3 hazelnuts that I mentioned earlier. So moving on to the method now, you will need to select a suitable oven. An iron stove works best, but always inspect it first to ensure it's not occupied by an entrapped prince seeking your hand in marriage. Preheat the oven to its maximum setting, and do take great care when testing the temperature of the oven so as not to fall in. If in doubt, get a witch to do it for you. This has the added benefit of ridding you of the witch should you succeed in pushing her into the oven. But do take great care not to burn down the house in the process. Place the pea under 20 mattresses and 20 feather beds. This does nothing to enhance the flavour of the pea, but it's very useful in testing the veracity of any would-be princesses who come calling. Open the hazelnuts then, and remove 3 dresses of gold and silver, each more beautiful than the last. Wear the dresses on successive nights to attend the palace ball, but do take great care to leave before midnight, as there may be unforeseen consequences. Then whisk your eggs to a light fluffy consistency. On no account let yourself be tempted to cut open the goose that laid them. It's not really made of gold and you won't have any more eggs. Mix the dry ingredients in a bowl. A magic porridge pot is ideal for this, as it will multiply the ingredients to the required amount. But do always have a prepared password to halt multiplication, as pots of this sort do have a tendency to go on multiplying indefinitely and filling the neighbourhood with unwanted ingredients. Then dice your apple and turnip, but take great care with sharp implements. Limbs and even heads have been known to grow back, but there's no guarantee of that. Add the remaining ingredients and stir vigorously, with assistance from talking animals and helpful strangers and any other odd creatures that may be hanging around. Grease and line an oven-approved tin then, and use plenty of elbow grease. This will either come naturally, since your family treat you as a domestic servant, or it will be a great challenge, as this is the first time you've done a decent day's work in your life. Put the pan into the oven then, and bake the mixture well until you smell the blood of an Englishman, at which point it is, of course, traditional to cry out fee, fi, fo, fum. Or you may have an oven alarm that does that for you. Remove the finished product from the oven and allow to cool. Please take care that it does not become sentient and run as fast as it can. You don't want to lose your baking to a fox at this point. And then serve it with a side dish of last-minute revelations and tearful reunions. The beauty of this recipe is that it can be stretched to serve any number, although 3, 7 or 12 is traditional. And if you do find you have any leftovers at the end of the day, these can be baked into a humble pie and served to your former tormentors. So I hope you enjoyed the recipe. Don't forget to share your results online with the hashtag. Thank you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Actually, your time has come, I think, because as I remember, the fairy tales of the past were like sort of parables or warnings of the times that people lived in. Because when you read some of the really old fables and fairy tales, they're so violent and capricious. People just die just unexpectedly, and a violent death. And I read, and there's an explanation, and well, that's because the life and times, you know, were violent. You never knew who was going to invade or, you know, whatever. So with these unprecedented times, as the media loves to say, we probably need some new fairy tales. So are you going to write some for these times? Have you been inspired to write some?
I haven't. I've been so busy working on the projects that I was already working on that I haven't actually had time to write a fairy tale, particularly about these times, but it may come.
All right, good. Yeah, well, yes, the fallout might inspire the tales that you will tell for the children of the future, if there are any children. Anyway, enough doom and gloom. Let's move on to our next presenter, who's from Bradford, I believe. That's where they're located. So will you please welcome Mussarat Rahman? Yay! Take it away.
Hi.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Hi. Well, my name's Mo, and I'm based in Bradford. I'm a visual artist. I work with disadvantaged communities, and a lot of communities I work with from refugees and asylum seekers, and together we work on social action projects. This is a boat that we actually pitched to the Bradford Festival. It didn't look like this. It's actually been enhanced. What we did it on migration movement and the DNA of people. So we used handprints from people to create the sails, and then we tie-dyed the base with spices. This was the first time we actually, this picture, I spent 2 years working on migration themes, and we were just looking at identity and roots, and this is made from handprints again, from adults, children, and different communities. So that's why it's so colourful. And we've added loads of little bits of earthy elements in there with some flowers. So I'm quite experimental in my practices. This is the World Peace Tree, and we did it on basically that we're all connected and we're all human, and we wanted to do something that would connect us together. So we did a tree where you could write messages of hope, love, peace, and unity, and just send global messages to the world. We actually used a peace tree at the Philia conference last year. It was a feminist conference, and we changed it a little bit. So there's lots. That's why you can see loads of women hanging off the trees, because it was predominantly women, to be honest. We actually held this up had it up for exhibition in the Media Museum, in the Leeds Museum as well. So we rehashed it and made it different in the museum as well. So we've used the tree for different elements and different projects, where we've used it to bring people together in different communities, and we've just used it as where we can do workshops around the tree and get people to add messages to the tree as well. So that one is done. So this is part of the sale. It was actually, what you can see, is made from handprints. It took a lot of work because it was quite big. It was 6 foot by 6 foot. So you can imagine the amount of work that had to go into the tree. So we got lots of different people to get their hands out to draw around take part in it, because it was a community action project, and we wanted as many people involved as possible. So we used lots of different people from different communities come and get involved in making of the boat. So that was another social action project. This was another project called Humanizing. It was based on dropping all labels, because people didn't want to be seen as a refugee or asylum seeker. So they just want to be known as people. Some people weren't comfortable with having their photographs taken, so we artified them. And these boards are quite big. They're size A2, and we used a mixed medium on them, used sand and recycled papers, and we tore them up and created images. So we tried to hash them out. This was part of the Rapid Festival. It was called, part of the World Peace Tree. We did a series of boards on the MPs and the politicians. So we did this one called Made a Monster, when she changed the rules to the benefits of child benefits. So we just did her as an 8-legged octopus eating all the kids. It was quite funny, actually. We did a couple of Trumpy boards as well, and people were having a very good go at bashing them as well. So people had a bit of a giggle with these. So we do like to have a little bit of fun there. As you can see, there you go, with the Trumpy boards. You could actually take the tail off. This was called Pin the Tail on the Trumper. So you could actually take the tail off. We did it on those little Spanish donkeys that people bashed. So, but we couldn't actually make a 3D one. We didn't have enough time, so we did it like with loads of pictures of Trump on it. So we had people putting messages up, what they felt about the state of the world. So we did some debate boards to see how people felt. And, people were free to express themselves in whichever way they wanted. So it was quite an interesting day. Again, these are boards that we did with the group, which was the Refugee and Asylum Seeker group. These were quite big, and we did a mix of men and women, and we used all sorts of different types of materials and embellishments. So we've been quite creative when we've been using creative arts materials. We've been using as much recycled material as possible. So this is how we created these boards as well. So we've got different variations from people, I suppose, of how they came out. This one is actually the youth tree. It was created with students from Bradford College, and they've got 6 areas about identity, superheroes, about roots, which is at the bottom of the tree, and about how they felt about their life and their future. You can see that they've used symbols for mental health, positive mental health on the other side. And then we did lots of different other little aspects on there, just to tie it across all the themes for how young people felt about college and study. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Mo. I think your time has come as well, because the idea of community, that's the flavour of the month, isn't it? And people coming together and creating art. I mean, if the unemployment rate is as bad as people fear, it's like, well, what do we do all day? In fact, what do we do all day now? Actually, I remember when I was a film student, I watched a bunch of student films, and there was one film in particular that I remember, because the way they scripted it, the day shift put this engine together, this car engine, and then a night shift came on and they took it apart. And then the day shift started again and they put it together again. And this just went on. And it actually was like, actually, I could see that happening in the future, just to keep people occupied. I think we're near that time now, actually. Anyway, that was brilliant. Thanks, Mo. Let's move on to our next presenter, who you might have seen last week. After the presentations, we had a bit of a chat afterwards, and it transpired, we weren't live streaming then, but it transpired that Bird had a fascinating story. And everyone who was presenting said, oh, that would make a great presentation. So he's agreed to come along this week and to tell the story. So please welcome Bird Lovegod.
You ready, Bird? Oh,
again.
There we go. Hold on, I think we're having issues.
Yes.
There we go. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Easter. So here's a brief rundown of what that means. Okay. Let's talk about God. A real and actual thing, which you might believe in slightly more in about 4 minutes from now. But before we talk about God and Jesus, given that it's Easter especially, and the definition and relationship of Jesus and God and what it all means, including how it all began and so forth, let's talk about human beings. So we are, in my perception and understanding, a mind, a body, and a soul. We will have a slide in a minute representing that. You know, we talk about the soul food, soul this, soul that. Any artist that doesn't believe in the soul makes dead art, quite frankly. And it's, you know, it's hardly able to call themselves an artist, a craftsman, perhaps. The soul is an actual and real thing. What exactly it is, we could talk about that in depth, but it's a real and actual thing. It's also the thing that's alive within us. So, human, mind, body, and soul. I'd also say that all living creatures are mind, body, and soul as well, to some degree or other. Right, so for me, this isn't open to debate. This is completely non-debatable. I know for a fact I have a soul. The fact that I know that means that you also have a soul. If you don't know that, that is not my issue. That is just what you haven't experienced, right? But it's still true. If it's true for me, it has to be true for you. Right, here's a scenario. Humans and God aren't connected, right? So you can actually say that you don't believe in God, right? Because you're not connected to it in the same way as you're not connected to many people. Like Jesus is and was connected to God, absolutely, in a state of God consciousness. So when he incarnated on earth 2,000 years ago, he taught people this. He exemplified the absolute pinnacle of human conduct and behavior and ethics. Love your enemy and so forth. There's never been a higher ethicist. And then people killed him. And he actually, there's an element of karmic sacrifice in it as well. So that would have been the end, apart from the fact that Jesus then started to be essentially reborn within people, within his disciples and within the other people. All right, so they go out and tell other people. And for this, they receive persecution, but they do it anyway, because they know it's true. So this person says, please come into my life. They experience the Holy Spirit and they experience God and Jesus, and they know it's true, and no one can ever tell them different, ever. Imagine that times 10 billion on Earth, and we've got an entirely new species, a transformed race of human beings. In fact, you've got heaven on Earth, a species connected to God and no longer continuously at war with itself, destroying the earth, degrading and degenerating things, and so forth. Right, so that would unify man and God, which is actually how it should be and how it actually kind of normally is. Right, so our condition of separation is not normal. So this will bring about a new age of absolutely everything. So it would transform everything. No war, no poverty, no crime. Literally, everybody be in the business of restoring the earth and creating heaven on earth. Like Jesus said, I am the way. He is the way to achieve this. He is the path to walk and the mechanism by which this is achieved. He also said many, many things along the lines of, I am the truth. And he wasn't lying when he said these things. And if you're, by the way, doubting whether Jesus existed or not, it's absolutely historical fact. No historian doubts Jesus lived. It's a fact. He also said, I'm the life. And indeed, he is the life. And he's the life that lives within millions of people. So to help you think of it in terms of totally non-religious terms, think of it like Wi-Fi and the internet, right? Everybody's like a standalone computer, apart from the people who have actually connected through Wi-Fi, i.e. the Holy Spirit, to the internet. Call that Jesus if you like, right? So there's a whole load of people that know for 100% fact that everything I've said there is true. And they know it's fact because they've experienced it. And then there's a whole load of people who haven't experienced it, that don't know it's true. And for them to believe it would rock the very foundation of their understanding of reality. Nevertheless, it's still true. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Bird. I thought we were going to get the story of how you got your epiphany and how
I experienced what I've just described.
But we'll talk about that after the random slide challenge. Before we move on to that, I just want to say, for those who are watching, that Bettakultcha is open to anyone who has something to say, as long as it's not a sales pitch. That's the #1 rule: no sales pitches. So if you want to have a chat about something, you've got 5 minutes, get some images, get in touch through the Bettakultcha Twitter site or Facebook or whatever, and we'll get you booked in. We're on every week, 8 o'clock, Saturday night, 8 p.m. So plenty of opportunities to talk. Right, we're going to move on to the random slide challenge, and then we're going to have a general chat afterwards. And Elizabeth has already volunteered. We were in the green room just chatting before we went live, and I was explaining about the random slide challenge, and Elizabeth said, I'll do it, because she's a storyteller. So well done, Elizabeth, for volunteering. And are you ready to do the random slide challenge?
I'll ever be.
Great, I'll pass you over.
Let's go.
So once there was a man who worked in an office and had a very boring job. One day he got a text on his phone. And just he was reading it and wondering what it said. It was from a friend of his who was about to get on a train to Edinburgh, and he'd left the first man, we'll call the first man Tom, or told the second man Jack, and he'd had a text, and he was telling him that interestingly he'd had a text from a snow monkey in Japan that live in the mountains. The snow monkey had just had a consignment of apples from the person that brought him apples every day. And the snow monkey had had a text from a very upset girl, and the snow monkey was providing the girl with counselling, and he wanted to tell the friends, the Tom and Jack and everyone about it. Now, the reason that this girl was upset was because of her daughter had done something that morning that was quite upsetting, or something had happened to her, certainly, even though she wasn't very good at telling her mum because she was holding the phone the wrong way round. And what it was, the daughter had actually attempted to answer a call from a call centre, which was very brave of her since she was only 1 year old, and this call centre had called her up asking if she was the householder, and she wasn't. So she actually passed the call on to the dog, because the dog was older than the girl, and it was more equipped to deal with that sort of thing. And if it didn't like what the call centre said, it could offer to come round and bite their ankles. Well, by this point, everyone was starting to feel like they were living in some kind of virtual reality, where dogs were taking cold calls and Japanese snow monkeys were providing counselling to people. And the friends that were receiving these texts wondered if it was happening, but then they did remember that there were people full of all sorts of weird conspiracy theories such as that the moon landing never happened or that the Earth is flat, etc. And they remembered that some of these conspiracy theorists almost went down into the underworld, bringing people up, because that's what they claimed to do, to bringing souls up out of the underworld to join their movements. And that was the end of the text.
Fantastic. That is going to be the toughest gig you will ever do. No, honestly, it really is. You know, to make up a story of 10 slides you've never seen before, and you breeze through it. So clearly, you know what you're talking about, and because you're a successful author, I understand, Elizabeth. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, don't be modest. You tell the world.
Okay, I've won some awards.
See, I didn't know that. That's terrific. Right, we're going to have a little chat now. So, would anybody like to start us off?
I've got one.
Go on.
So when Bird were just talking then, he was talking about truth, about knowing something to be true.
Yeah.
Isn't truth an abstract noun? Truth, everybody's truth different. There's no such thing as something that's 100% true.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
because truth's an abstract term. It's not true for some people.
Okay, so some things are subjective and other things are objective, right? So there are truths, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, Pontius Pilate said, "What is truth?" So it's a question people have asked philosophically, but there are absolute truths, okay? So you can believe one thing, for example, about the creation of the world, and somebody could believe another thing about the creation of the world, right? And somebody else could believe another thing. But here's what the truth is, right? God knows what the truth is. Right? So we're all guessing, but God knows. And so God is truth in almost every possible instance. And
Do you think God's an
that's my
absolute?
response to that. Go on.
Do you think God's an absolute? Does he mean the same thing to everybody?
Whether he means the same thing to everybody is almost not relevant. God means what God means to God. God is God.
Okay.
And so it's not humans that decide what God is. It's God that knows what God is.
Okay, can I ask what is God then?
What is God?
What is God? Yeah, you tell me what is God.
Okay, God is spirit.
Okay.
I don't know for 100% certainty everything about God by any means, but God is spirit.
Okay. Yeah.
And God is, that's definite. God, it may be that nothing exists except God. That's quite possible.
But isn't that just a cop-out? It's like, you know, because I have this alter ego of "this is not art, boy," and I go around with a placard that says "this is not art." And people say, "Oh no, anything can be art."
Sure.
And I say to them, well, what is the point of having a category called art? It's all just stuff. So if you say everything could be God, it's like, well, why do we bother with the definition of God? If it's all God, let's just get on with it.
Right. It's not about you. It's not about humans. God is God, right? So I can't give you an absolute on what God is. But I mean, look at something like the Big Bang, right? The creation of the universe. That proves basically the existence of God, right? It's absolutely ridiculous, and I mean literally ridiculous, to think that our entire universe, consisting of literally billions of suns, billions of stars, right? The volume and mass beyond our comprehension, that came from nothing. That is an impossible thing to believe. If you believe that came from nothing, you are believing something that is impossible, right? So it had to come from something. Something had to have created it, in fact. So what we're dealing with in terms of God is something so beyond our comprehension that it is literally capable of creating our entire universe. Right?
I've got a theory for you, Bird.
Huh?
I've got a theory for you, a scientific one, that there's a branch of mathematics that talks about spin in the universe. I've forgotten the correct term, but ideally, what's supposed to happen is that everything in the universe is created and then destroyed by antimatter. And so it always creates, destroys, destroys. And then this mathematician worked out that there was an error somewhere, which is why we've got mass.
Yeah.
But we have mass because the antimatter hasn't destroyed it. And I wondered if that error was the Garden of Eden. And then when Adam and Eve were expelled, that was where we got the universe from, because of this imbalance in the mathematics.
I don't know. Right, so that's a number of theories bolted together, including that the universe didn't exist prior to the Garden of Eden, if you like. And the Garden of Eden represents a state of humanity being connected to God and being connected to each other.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but that is the idea of connection. I think that is the crucial element of what you're talking about. Everyone that speaks about their connection with God, it's always that they have this connection. Yes. And I think that is the hunger of most of people in society, that they don't feel connected. And the way they're inculcated in society is this selfish, there is no such thing as society, blah, blah. They're all isolated. And what we hunger for is connection with something beyond ourselves. And I think that's the important thing about it.
Of course. And that thing is God, which would also connect us to each other and to the living planet.
Okay, well, not everybody believes what you believe. And
I know that. I'm well aware that most people don't believe it.
I know, but you can't even go around basically asking people to, the way you're coming across, that is your absolute truth from what I'm gathering, yeah?
Yeah, it's my experience.
Yeah, that's your experience, okay. But
yes.
There's a lot of people, we've worked with the things we do in the community, we work with a lot of people who come from different religions. Because they've been persecuted for their religious beliefs, they don't absolutely become atheists. They absolutely have no interest in religion. So we just let them do their thing, because we're not going to sit there and say God is the absolute truth. We've had a lot of people come in who think they need rescuing and need saving, and we said, no, leave them alone. They'll find themselves. So to me, I just believe in spirit. I do believe that there's an unconscious force, as power, a presence. But I think people connect to it as they see fit. That's the way I see it.
So Mo, do you have people who were religious and then through their unfortunate life and the persecution abandoned their religion?
Absolutely, they've become we had a spate of, I'm not going to name them because that's their privacy. We had quite a few different communities that have come into our group, because I do a lot of work with disadvantaged refugees and asylum seekers. And because of what was happening in their country, and they felt like the religion had been forced, this doctrine had been forced upon them, and they were so angry. And then they tried to swap to a different religion. That didn't help. And then in the end up, they just says, well, no, I'm just going to they totally dropped religion and just decided they changed it to become either atheists or humanists. Saying, as humanists, I can understand, because they're talking about connections and, they're talking about people matter more than religion. And I totally understand that. But we just left them alone, where we used to find people felt like they needed rescuing and saving. They don't need rescuing, they don't need saving. They get to a point where they need to become comfortable with their own decisions. And whichever way you go, that's your choice, you're free to do whatever you want.
Free will, exactly. So far we have free will, absolutely. And I wouldn't be in the business of taking that away. Some religions take that away. I don't. Christianity doesn't either.
So, Bird, can you tell us about your epiphany, your moment of epiphany? Because you changed your name to Bird Love God, you were telling me last week.
Well, it wasn't such...
Can you describe the moment when you suddenly made the connection with God?
It was a process. So it's like boiling water and it becomes steam, right? So you're asking me, about that process. It started when I received the Holy Spirit. Right? And to be very clear, right, I was brought up an atheist actively, right? Both my parents were atheists. My dad was a professor of artificial intelligence. None of my friends were believers. None of my family were. But I wanted to know the truth. I didn't care what other people thought. I wanted to know the truth. Simple as that. And I wanted to, and I felt there was something, right? That was all. I just felt there was something. And so I said to God at one point, when I used to go down to the cathedral in Sheffield at night and put £5 notes in the pockets of sleeping homeless people, I said, God, give me what I need and I will work for you. And that's the kind of prayer that God says, okay, I can do that for you. And within a few days or perhaps a week, I received the Spirit of God, like on those slides I showed. The Spirit of God came into my physical body and co-combined with my own soul. And I experienced the connectivity with God. And then that process kind of intensified over about a 9-month period, which included doing some very profound meditations, things like going silent even for an entire week, just communicating by writing, things like this. And if you do that, and it's incredibly hard to do, but if you do it, your mind goes to almost stop and your soul can wake up. And the absolute pinnacle, although there's been many, because it's a relationship, but the absolute pinnacle of the connectivity, like the consummation, if you like, of that relationship, was a baptism of love, of feeling what God feels like to a human being.
Can we just
this? Bang, that. An absolute inferno of love.
Because you said you were actively brought up as an atheist. I find that fascinating. How can you give me an example of what they said to you that was actively teaching you atheism?
I was taught that God wasn't real. I was taught that only stupid people believed in God, and that it was all about science.
So that's what they just said. There is no such thing as God. Science has disproved it. You will not believe in this thing.
Yeah, it was never ever discussed or debated or it was we never went to church. None of that.
Because one of the things that I find fascinating is that the way people think that their religion is the only one. And as far as, apart from pantheism, there isn't any sort of religion that says, well, actually, let's take bits from everywhere because they're all valid. They all talk about the same unifying spirit. We'll call it God for, convenience terms, and not have these schisms between, oh, no, this religion is better than this one, or this is the true. It just seems odd to me that you have to choose a particular path and that you can't deviate from it. That seems to be contrary to what you're saying is what religion is about. If you've got a connection, it doesn't matter where the connection is. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure. But if I said to you, okay, there's a treasure, go and find it. You might say to me, where is it? Could I have a map? Right? So somebody with a religion that has experienced it, only believe what somebody's experienced. Don't believe people that don't literally know what they are talking about. So I know God. I know Jesus. So when I talk about God and I talk about Jesus, I'm doing so from a sense of experience, right, which gives me a certain authority, right, because I know what I'm talking about. Have people found God through other paths? Quite possibly. But the path that I'm able to give you is the one that I know.
But if people find
it's a very well documented one, and it's one that if you are genuinely questioning whether it's real or not, I can absolutely guarantee you that if you personally explore that path, you will find that it is in fact real.
I think that everybody finds spirit in their own way. I think everybody has a personal journey or pathway back to spirit. And I think sometimes it will take you down different routes. I don't follow religion. I believe in, I do believe that there's a force, an omnipresent force in spirit. I definitely believe that. But I don't believe that it comes from any particular religion. I don't.
Well, if you look at how religions form.
I was brought up in a Muslim community. I basically got to a point and I thought, right, I'm going to go explore different religions and find out for myself. For me, when I went through it and I looked at different communities and I met lots of different friends. I've got loads of friends, they're all different religions. And we sit there talking and I've just thought, well, I was brought up to believe that God was a man. And I thought, well, I don't believe that God is a man. I don't believe that God is a woman. I believe that there's an omnipresent force. I don't, so I have that view. So, and when I started meeting my friends and talking to them, we all started comparing the narratives about Jesus. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm saying that Jesus was a prophet in Islam. He was a prophet in Judaism and Christianity. So there's so many connections there. So I thought, well, fine, everybody. Well, how can there be all these disparities in religions when you're all following the same thing? In a sense, you're all believing in one God and one faith, so there shouldn't really be any divide between the religions. So to me, this is why I like working with the group I'm with now, because we don't have any religion. We just have, if people have to be who they want to be and have any faith they want, but we just leave the religion at the door so we can all talk about the things that we want, because there's a lot of people in that community who don't believe in God and believe in some power or some force, and they either class it as humanist or something completely different.
Yeah.
So.
And honestly, I don't even care what people believe.
No, I understand. I totally understand where you're coming from.
Sure, I really don't.
I do understand you, and I understand your journey, and I understand what you're saying. But when I can relate it to how I've had my own spiritual awakening, in a sense, because to me, I dropped religion. I just thought, no, I feel as though we're all the same. We're all one people. We're all one consciousness, really. So it doesn't really matter about religion. To me, anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. If everybody experienced like a unity with God, there would be no religion, because there would just be the relationship with God and with each other.
Why don't they just call it love? Because all the religions talk about love, loving your enemy, loving this. If they just said, look, just love everyone, everything, that
Jesus did say that. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. First of all, God is real. So what you're trying to do there is pretend that God isn't real and just to call it love. So God is real, and by that I mean that God is a omnipresent, creative entity of a power that makes us totally insignificant. All right, so it's a fact God is real. So calling it love to avoid having to think of it as God is just like it's a form of denialism.
No, it wasn't.
Right? Second of all, humans don't have the capacity to love at the level required.
Well, I actually don't agree with that, and I think you are putting your views. What I do not agree with your views, actually, because I think
I'll prove it to you.
No, you can't convince me to do anything. You can't convince me.
I will prove it to you right now.
You can't prove nothing to me. You cannot prove nothing to me because I don't want to hear it.
I'll prove to you right now.
No.
That humans don't have the capacity
your views onto other people
to love each other.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I'll prove to you right now that humans don't have the capacity to love each other at scale. That proof is everything that you read in the news. Our society, all wars, all crime,
I don't believe that.
Our entire financial system, which means that millions and millions and millions of people die all the time because they lack money, right? Everything that we've created as a society and a civilization is a reflection of our consciousness and our capacity to love. Right? So listen, right? So the proof that human beings are not capable of loving each other to a very high level is our existing civilization and society.
Because that's about fear and control. That's what it's about. People
yes,
fear.
exactly.
For a long time.
And if people had the love of God within them, which is substantially more massive, which enables them to love in a sacrificial way, which enables them to love even their enemy, right? Which enables them to even lay down their own life for other people, then we would have an entirely different society.
Let me ask you sorry, Mel, can I just, because I just want to ask this question then. So, Bird, why is it then that organized religions are just concerned and obsessed with power?
Because they're politicized.
Why doesn't the Catholic Church say, give up all its riches, which, you know, number billions, if they, you know, believe their own teachings?
A great question, right? Why doesn't the Church of England do the same?
Yeah.
Right? Why even in this time right now, isn't the Church of England selling off its literally billions of pounds of assets and feeding the hungry? Okay, here's why. Because they're institutions. And institutions, be it governments, be it corporate institutions, be it religious institutions, political institutions, all institutions become self-serving. All institutions come to a point where they exist in order to facilitate and continue their own existence.
Right. So
that's why.
So you don't belong to any organized religion? Or...
I go to a church and I'm a part of a church, but I am also
an institution, a church.
Yeah, kind of. But in the truest sense, well, yes and no. Right. So in the truest sense, the Church of Jesus Christ is everybody who has experienced Jesus Christ.
Okay.
So the church, I am the church. And all the other people are the church. The church isn't the building. But when you get things like the Catholic Church and all these other power structures, it becomes politicized. It becomes about money and power and maintaining appearances and all these other human things.
I'll just mention here, but if anybody wants to leave the meeting, by the way, because they've got other stuff to do, that's perfectly all right. We just we want to hear the formal presentation, so don't feel obliged to sort of hang around and listen to the conversation. Just, you know, I mean, I find it fascinating, but other people, if they've got other stuff to do, as I say, they can leave the meeting.
So I just want to add to Bird. I've got a lot of friends who are spiritual teachers, healers, and they've done Reiki, and a lot of them have teach to do other things as well. I know you're talking about meditation, and then there's also different levels of spiritual healing that people do. Where you're talking about when you're talking about connected to the soul, you're talking about the I am presence as well, which is a completely different thing. I've done done a lot of courses on meditations, and I've been to a lot of spiritual. I used to go around all the spiritual fairs as well, and used to talk about these things as well.
Yeah, I've been all that.
I've done all that as well, and then I think you get to a point where you just got to find what's right for you, really, and find pathways to, you know, if you feel connected to going around and doing things like that, you've got to find somewhere to start it, I suppose. You know, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what might be useful for you. You know,
I've been there, done that. Okay. I have been there, done that.
I think we probably all have been there, because I studied Eastern meditation, Eastern philosophy, and all that kind of thing. And I remember I read this one sentence or this one paragraph that just blew it all away. I was so gobsmacked, and it was about a guy who was talking about reincarnation. And he said, where does the concept of reincarnation come from? It comes from India. And he says, what goes on in India? You've got the caste system in India, where if you are born into a caste, that's it for life. And so his theory was that they came up with the idea of reincarnation to placate the people, to think, oh, well, I'll be reincarnated, maybe up in another caste. And suddenly it all made sense. And it was like, oh my God, this is the truth. And that was a real epiphany for me. So that was my journey came to an end at that point. I stopped reading all the Eastern philosophy and stuff. And I think there's still value in it, the whole mindfulness thing and connecting to realizing you are more than just this organism is invaluable. So
I think ultimately with, well, not just religion, but anything, if you want to believe one point of view, you're going to find things to consolidate that point of view you've already got. So it's
confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's confirmation bias. So there's these certain subjects, particularly religion, particularly politics, where you never talk about them anywhere because people have got explosive views. And when somebody believes one way, it's often difficult to convince someone of another way. And it's just one of those cyclical topics as well, where everyone's often born one way, like Bird was. So luckily for Bird, he found his way past that. But some people are born into that, and that goes for politics too. You're born into always supporting Labour, never support Tory, and things like that. And some people can never break out of that because everything else around them doesn't let.
Actually, just reminded me, Craig, because Bird, you said your father was a professor in AI.
Yeah.
And AI now is writing symphonies, creating art.
It can't create art. But anyway.
Well, it's just fascinating that they're even trying. And actually, when I've listened to some of the musical pieces, I'm thinking, you know what? I can't really tell whether that's machine or human written.
There's a phrase.
Sorry, Craig.
There's a phrase for it.
Tell you.
There's a phrase for it in visuals. So in like 3D rendering and things like that, and cartoons and stuff. There's a phrase called the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
Where things look so real.
Too good. Yeah.
They look too good, but because as humans we can recognize when a human isn't real. We know it. We know it's not real, and we look at it and go, ugh, and we're horrified by it because it looks too real. And I kind of feel the same way as Bird as well. I don't think, even though AI and robotics and things is capable of making, in quote marks, art, it lacks the soul. Do you know what I mean? It lacks.
Now, let me hoist you with your own petard, Craig, because you did a Bettakultcha talk on Facebook, I believe, and you had some images of faces that have been created using artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And I could have sworn they were real people. There was no Uncanny Valley there. So
no, I agree.
It becomes so good now that maybe it starts to include the imperfections that humans think, yeah, that's human now. Maybe it's become that clever.
Yeah, maybe it starts to just put a couple of imperfections in there every 1,000 times, so you think it's imperfect.
And then you end up in a stage where actually, I don't know what is real and what isn't anymore.
Maybe some of it's already made by robots, for all we know.
Well, there's an actual genuine scientific theory that says this is all a simulation.
Well, you do know that physical matter doesn't exist, right?
You mean the energy that it is? Physical
matter is an illusion. According to quantum physics, there's no such thing as like solidity.
Yeah.
So, if you look at what an atom is, it's an energy field. It's protons and neutrons with like electron field, right? And you go into the protons and neutrons, and there's something else. They're quarks and something else. There's no solidity there. There's nothing. It's the same as the universe. It's the same as the actual universe. Huge amounts of space with what appear to be solid particles, but that aren't. So this is when I said it's quite possible that nothing exists except God. That's quite conceivable.
Well, what are you looking for, Bird? What are you looking
for? To serve God, and that's my duty. The end.
I think you're doing. And in what capacity are you going to do that then?
I do it all the time. Look at my websites.
So I'll have a look at your website. What's your website? I can get it up here.
birdlovegod.com and ethicalmuch.com. So today, for example, I delivered 5 food parcels to people at Washington Flats and up at Mill Houses or somewhere. Wood seats. Same as I did yesterday.
I think ultimately it's your actions that speak louder than any proselytizing. So,
I don't preach. I don't preach, right? I just do it. I just act. But I do some very real stuff. Last October, I wanted to know if it was possible to save somebody's life, right? By going to a country, like a poor country, with a few £1,000s and seeing if it was possible to save someone's life. And this was like an art idea that I'd had for about 10 years. And I'd been writing about humanitarian interventions as art for about 10 years. So I did it. So I went to Cambodia in October and visited the prison system in Cambodia and delivered humanitarian aid to prisons there through a charity that's a Christian charity. And on about day 4, I realized it was going to be impossible to save some random person's life because I had no way of communicating with anyone. I was in Phnom Penh, a city of about 2 million people, none of them Westerners, none. I spoke no language, and there was no access into anybody's life. So I was like, all right, God, like Jesus, let's, and I dedicated this entire journey to Jesus Christ and to God before going. I mean, I'd written this down as a prayer, how I dedicate this to you. I dedicate the outcome, the responsibility, if it succeeds, the responsibility of saving someone's life, all of it into your hands, Lord. Guide me. If it works, if it doesn't matter. So I gave up on about day 4, got in a taxi and a tuk-tuk, and within an hour of giving up and being a tourist, I was given the opportunity to intervene in somebody's life and save somebody's life. And the way that it transpired, and it took the rest of the 2 weeks I was there, and it was the one white American person in Phnom Penh, one of like 2 Westerners that I saw the entire time I was there. And the way that the way that it happened and it came about was 100% in accordance with a piece of scripture from Matthew, which goes along the lines of, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. The guy was naked when I found him. I was a stranger and you took me in. He was a complete stranger in this mad land. And I took him into the hotel and kept him there for 4 days until the wounds on his feet and on his arms became too much. And I was sick and you nursed me. So I took him to a hospital and booked him into a private hospital there, and ultimately got his brother to fly over from America and to take him back home. And so and his brother thanked me for saving his brother's life. And it was literally line by line to the scripture, the last line being, I was in prison and you visited me. And that also I did in that 2-week period, 100% bang to rights, guided by Jesus Christ, premeditated journey with an impossible to premeditate outcome, 100% guided by Jesus Christ, outcoming in the saving of a person's life.
Okay, I think we ought to start wrapping it up, Craig. I want to thank everyone who has presented. Does anybody want to say a few words before we go? A last few words? No?
I think we've said
Oh,
it.
one last word.
I'd like to say thank you, actually. It's been really nice. It's been the first time I've done this anyway.
You going to do it again?
Yeah, I loved it. It's been nice. I didn't rehearse what I was going to say before I said it, to be honest. I just thought, right, get some images together.
That's the best way.
Elizabeth, do you want to say anything?
No, just thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Thanks for presenting and telling your story. That was brilliant. And Bird, thanks for contributing your epiphany and your thoughts. That was fantastic. Again, if anybody wants to get involved in Bettakultcha, get in touch online, Twitter, etc., etc. We love to hear these kind of stories. Anything that's fascinating or intriguing, we can explore it in this non-censored space. We're just open and welcoming. So yeah, if anybody wants to tell a story, please get in touch. So thanks again to everyone for getting involved. We'll see you all next time.
God bless.